Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and I am so excited for today's episode. Before we get into today's topic, I want to remind everybody to please subscribe to this podcast and write a review down below. I really love reading your guys' reviews, and I really love interacting with some of the comments you're leaving behind because it teaches me how to be a better podcast host. I find out what you guys want to hear about, what you don't want to hear about, what you love and what you hate. So it's super helpful, and I definitely recommend and ask that you go write a review of our podcast. And if you're feeling so generous, go follow us on social media as well, because I'm always trying to continue the conversations that we're having on the podcast over there. So if you have questions, if you have comments, or if you have suggestions for me, reaching out through social media is a really great way for me to hear them and for me to answer them one-on-one. So let's get into today's episode. Today I want to talk about how you can shake up your marketing. So right now we're hitting the end of January, which means a lot of people's New Year's resolutions have probably already been put on the wayside and people aren't, keeping up with them anymore. But I want to show you a way that you can sort of restart that January 1st energy that you had, that you were going to improve your social media, that you were going to improve your digital footprint, and that you were going to try new things. I'm going to give you some ways in which you can do that, again, even though, we're all hitting that sort of end of the new year buzz, and we're not feeling those 2020 vibes anymore. We're going to restart your heart rate, and we are going to get you back into the spirit of trying new things. So all that and more on today's episode, so stay tuned for that. But just to start out today's episode, I always love giving you guys an update on what is happening in the marketing world. And today is no different because we have some really big stories that I'm super excited to share with you all. The first one being the Netflix is set to change their marketing plan. So last year, Netflix spent more than $1.8 billion on advertising. Now the company's new chief marketing officer, Jackie Lee Joe, who was hired from BBC Studios in July following former chief of marketing officer Kelly Bennett's retirement, has apparently said that Netflix has overhired in the marketing department. And Jackie Lee Joe is looking to structure the team in a more effective way. Netflix marketing plan is apparently going to be changing from promoting individual shows such as those commercials that you saw for Bird Box, Glow, Late Night with David Letterman that was going on there, or what was that show called? My Next Guest Is with David Letterman. All of those shows were individually promoted. However, Netflix is set to be changing their marketing strategy to promote the overall service rather than the individual products. However, although I'm always a fan of perhaps changing up your marketing strategy, which is what we're going to be talking about today, which is why this story is just a perfect example, this unfortunately might mean a lot of layoffs due to these changes. So we're going to stay tuned with this story, and we're going to see how it impacts the individual workers at Netflix, because of course it's going to impact the individual person, just like it's going to impact the individual marketing strategies. So we are going to look into all of that as this story progresses. Our next story is that Facebook has created an off-Facebook activity tool that is restricting data available to digital advertisers. So this story is a really big deal to everyone listening to this podcast, because I'm sure everybody who is listening to this podcast, other than my mom who listens to this podcast, hi Mom, they're all working in the marketing field, and they all have marketing ads on Facebook right now that are targeted to people who are looking them up, that are liking their content, that are sharing their posts. But now Facebook has found a way that you can no longer get that data from those people. So it works like this. It's available in people's settings menu on the social network, and it leads to a list of brands that have data on the user. People can see if the brands such as Hulu, J.Crew, Home Depot, Netflix, any of the mass marketers have shared data with Facebook. They can also delete that data, so the brand could no longer use the connection as a way to target personal ads. So, I'm sure a lot of users are really excited about this, but a lot of marketers aren't going to be excited about this because imagine going on to your social media deck, like your business manager deck, and your numbers seem really low and you're really confused because literally yesterday they were high and now they've dropped. And it's because if a person deletes their online tracks, a brand might not be able to tell if and when they served that person an ad, or if the ad was effective. So this is going to lead to a lot of confusion, a lot of misplaced data, and it's going to also eventually lead to the fact that we're not going to be able to personalize ads anymore if people choose to turn it off. It has been said, though, by quite a few specialists in the field, it's not going to be such a big deal, and people are overworked up about it because a lot of people, although they might have the option, they're not going to go through the steps to actually turn this off, or they're not going to care enough to go turn it off. So it's going to be a bit of a coin flip, and it's going to depend on your business and your region if your audience chooses to turn off their data for your ads. So definitely something to be aware of and something to keep your eye out for. Our third story for today is that Spotify is going to be looping videos on Instagram. So Spotify recently released a new feature called Spotify Stories. It's very similar to Instagram Stories. So they've decided to use this third-party service called Canvas, in which you can loop your Spotify stories in with your Instagram stories. This way, the two platforms can work more closely together, and they won't be competing for audiences, and they won't be competing for creators and which platform they should be using more versus the other. Instead, they can work together and collaborate to create something that everyone is happy with, and the audience will still be getting the same level of content, if not more engaging content. So very interesting to see these two companies working together using a third-party service to sort of close that gap, because social media is changing. TikTok is getting bigger and bigger. So I definitely think companies like Spotify and Instagram do need to start working together if they're going to survive this next digital explosion, I'm going to call it, because I think we're going to be seeing a lot more platforms come up over the next couple of years. And I do think Instagram and Spotify can stand the test of time, but they're going to have to find ways to be creative and make changes. And looping in their videos together is just a great way to do that. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast. But when we come back, I am going to tell you how you can shake up your social media. So that is going to be our first step in shaking up your marketing. We're going to focus on your social media. So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Before the break, I was telling you about everything that was new in the marketing world. We talked about Instagram and Spotify joining together and using a third-party service called Canvas so that creators can loop their content on both services instead of trying to compete over similar audiences. We then talked about how Facebook has created an off-Facebook activity tool that will be restricting data available to digital advertisers. This is a news story, but it is also a warning to all of you out there who are creating digital ads on Facebook right now, just so that you are aware of these changes and that you are aware that your numbers will be affected by that. And our other story was that Netflix is set to make changes to their marketing plan. The plan is apparently going to focus more on the actual service itself rather than the individual products. And although this will be great for Netflix and it'll be a great opportunity for their new chief marketing officer, Jackie Lee Joe, to show their strengths in the marketing world, and hopefully they'll start to see a shift in their profit margins because Disney Plus and Amazon Prime are catching up to them pretty fast. Disney Plus apparently stole like 1 million of their subscribers. So we definitely do need to see a change in Netflix's marketing. However, this change may also bring layoffs, which would be very sad and very unfortunate. All right, now that we are back from our break, I want to talk about how you can shake up your social media. So today's episode is really focused on how you can shake up your marketing, and shaking up your social media is such a great way to start. Basically, I'm going to take you through a couple of different ways you can shake up your marketing on a large scale and a small scale. Small things you can do to shake it up, large things you can do to shake it up. But I want to start with the smaller things. That way you can try them. And if you find that it's still not working, if you're still not finding yourself being energetic or satisfied with your marketing, you can move to the bigger steps that you can try. But let's just start with the smallest that we can so that maybe you can see really great results without having to rebrand your entire marketing department. So shaking up your social media is a really great first step to take if you're looking to make changes with your marketing, because there are just so many basic things you can do that could make a huge difference. So you need to start trying new things with your social media. So this could be creating a new post. So I talk a lot on this podcast about social media and the types of posts you can be creating and the type of content you should be creating for your individual audiences. But just in case, you are sick of always posting about your couches that are for sale, you're sick of posting giveaways, you're sick of posting promotions, I'm going to give you 3 new post ideas that I think would help shake up your marketing a little bit on the social media on the social media front, and really just help you engage with your audience a little bit more. So the first one would be a tips and tricks post. So this one won't be selling anything, but it should be related to what you do sell. So if you sell furniture, maybe a tips and tricks post could be how to keep your furniture clean, how to resell your furniture, how to refurbish your furniture, how to design your home, how to do interior design. There are so many different routes you can take with the tips and tricks post, because it just needs to be related to what you sell, but it doesn't have to be a service you actually sell. So one that I really liked in there was how to do interior design, because you're obviously going to get to showcase your products, but people are going to see it as more of a way to engage with your content and get some tips and tricks on interior design, because people love interior design. Like, there's YouTube channels, television shows, radio shows, podcasts, all dedicated to interior design. So I think what I'm really getting at here is find the trend that is associated with your product. Because if you're selling kitchen appliances, then you can do a cooking tips and tricks post. You can do a dessert tips and tricks post. Like, there's so many different ways and avenues that you can take with your product based on a trend or based on a style that your product is related to. The second post you can do is a joke of the day. So a joke of the day is really fun and people really love it and really love engaging with it. I know it sounds silly and it's going to have nothing to do with your product, but it is going to be a great way for people to engage with your content and for people to want to follow you because they know they aren't just getting sold to, that there's an actual person behind that Instagram profile and that person likes to laugh. This does not have to be something that stays on your feed. It can be something that you put on your Instagram stories so that it fades away within 24 hours. The third post is a behind the scenes post. So people really love seeing these because, again, it's that human element, especially if you're able to try something, and we'll talk about this more later. But if you're able to vlog your behind the scenes, like even if it's just on Instagram stories, so again, it'll fade away in 24 hours, people really love seeing your office, your workspace, your morning routine, what you have for lunch, but they don't necessarily want to see that stuff on your feed. So definitely try just doing it on your Instagram stories or on your Facebook stories for a little bit, for a couple weeks, just to see how people are engaging with that content versus how people are engaging with your ads. The next thing you can do to shake up your social media is change your posting schedule. So first of all, I talk about this a lot, but let me just reiterate it because it's so simple and so important. You need to have a consistent posting schedule. So right now, you need to know what days and what times you post, and you always need to post on those days and those times. If you're not doing that, a way to shake up your social media would be to start doing that. But if you are doing that, what I'm suggesting is you shake up that schedule. Say that you only post Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Try posting Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Try just posting on the weekdays. Try posting twice a day. Try posting every day for a week if you've never done that before. Or you could go completely in the opposite direction here and only post on Mondays. And now here's the thing. I'm saying do that. I'm saying try that. Do not stick to that. Do not stick to any of these. You should always be consistently changing your consistent posting schedule, which sounds backwards and a little bit crazy. But what I'm saying is do something for a couple months and then change it again. Do something for a couple weeks and then change it again. But if you're doing something drastic, like suddenly only posting once a week, try that for 2 weeks maximum and then reflect on your data. Do not stick to that for 6 months. Do not stick to that for a year. Make sure you're always reflecting on your posting schedule and measuring that engagement to see when people want to react with your content. Because that data is available and that data will help you. The third thing you can do to shake up your social media is have someone audit your social media account. So first thing you need to do is hire a real professional to do this. Do not hire your sister's nephew. He's not good at social media. He's just a 14-year-old who has a TikTok account. Hire a real professional to come in and do a full audit on your social media. They're going to be brutal. They're going to give you criticism. And they're going to give you hard facts that you can't explain your way around. But the thing here is that although they're going to be brutal, they're professionals and they know what they're talking about. So it's definitely a really great way to get that outsider's perspective that you're not going to have because you're too in the middle of it all. You're too emotionally attached to your social media. So get someone new to come in, to take a look at it and give you the advice that you've been looking for. And then you really need to actually take the advice. Don't just pay all the money to have a professional come in and then ignore all of their suggestions. Put their suggestions into your marketing plan and move on from there. Okay, everyone. So there are my top 3 tips and tricks on how you can shake up your social media. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break from the podcast. But when we come back, I'm going to talk about how you can push yourself a little bit more with your marketing in general. We're going to have some social media tips in there again, but we're also just going to be talking on the large scale of how you can push yourself with your marketing. So stay tuned for that because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquich, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Today's episode is focused on shaking up your marketing. So before the break, we talked about how you can shake up your social media marketing. So I told you how you can create new posts, you can change your posting schedule, and you can hire a social media account auditor to come in and make those changes for you or make suggestions on how you should be shaking up your social media. Because right now, marketing really is so focused on social media. A great way to shake up your marketing is to shake up your social media because it's normally really cost effective. It won't totally break your budget, and it's just a really simple way to make a big difference. Now that we are back from our break, I'm going to talk about how you can be pushing yourself with your marketing. We're going to have some more social media tips and tricks in here, but really what I want to focus on is maybe you don't need to change anything other than how you're treating your marketing. Because if you're going into your marketing meetings every week saying, all right, we're just going to do the same thing that we always do and hope for better results. That's not going to give you better results. You need to push yourself and you need to do more. When I record this podcast, I try to research every little aspect of it. But when I first started, I had to try different things to find out how to research every aspect of it. And I always had to come into it with the feeling of today I'm going to research it differently so that I can push myself harder, so that I can achieve new things and new heights and new limits with this podcast. So that's what I want you to do with your marketing. The first way you can push yourself is you can ask your audience what they're not getting from your marketing. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. And the first one, you can go live on Facebook Live for an old-fashioned Q&A. So this can be done over Facebook Live, or you could send out a tweet asking people for their questions and then record it in a video format. Either way, a Q&A is a really great way to get people engaging with your content because they're going to want to give you honest questions and they're going to want to hear your honest answers, but it's also a really great way to find out where the mindset of your audience is and what they're focused on rather than what you're focused on. Now, it can be really, really intimidating and you may not want to do a Facebook Live, but somebody in your marketing team will love to do a Facebook Live. Ask that plucky intern whose hair is always nicely curled if she wants to get on Facebook Live. She's not going to have all the answers, but you can stand on the side and give her the answers. So definitely don't be frightened by a Facebook Live or don't be nervous about it because there are always ways around that. You can also ask your audience what they're not getting from your marketing by doing a survey. You can do this over the phone. You can do it in an email with MailChimp is a really great way to do that. Or you could even go door to door. This really depends on your business and your audience. You know who your audience is. If you're a retirement home, don't do it over social media. Don't do a Facebook Live Q&A. People, your audience, they're not going to respond to that. But going door to door or doing a phone survey, they might. The other day I did a phone survey for my university. So if you're thinking no one does that anymore, people absolutely do that. You just got to call them at the right time of day or maybe ask when would be a better time to call them, or just brainstorm with your team on the most effective way to do a phone survey because they are effective. You just got to do it at the right time. The next way you can push yourself to try something new The next way you can push yourself with your marketing is to try something new. So there's always new trends going on in the world. So for a while there, a long time ago, I don't know if anyone remembers this, there was a thing called the gallon challenge, and you had to drink a gallon of milk as fast as you could. And this was all over social media. And at the time, social media was just Facebook. So it was all over Facebook. But people participated all over the world. And trends like that are still happening today. In fact, more of them are happening today. So if you're a company that has very strong personalities, who you're trying to showcase those personalities more, get them to do a challenge. Get them to try a new trend. Right now, my favorite one is definitely ordering what the person in front of me ordered in the drive-thru. So basically for 24 hours, every meal that you have, you go through the drive-thru and you just say, I'll have what the person in front of me had. It's so silly, it's so dumb, but it's so entertaining to watch. So if you're looking to really showcase personalities or showcase your brand as being a fun brand, try a trend, go crazy with it, and just have fun, because internet trends are just supposed to be fun. So make sure you're having fun with this. You can also try something new by trying vlogging or doing Instagram stories and videos. So videos are so incredibly important right now for social media content and just for marketing in general, because people don't want to interact with an image anymore unless that image is just altogether breathtaking or altogether engaging. And that can be a lot to ask for a photo, but it's not a lot to ask for a video. So I have a very close friend who's a radio host, and every day she's just been vlogging her walk to work. She got a pumpkin spice latte when they came out in October, or she was showing how her Christmas tree is still up. And honestly, I love watching those videos. It's not even because I know her really well. I just find it fascinating what the life of a radio host is. So I think people want to be fascinated by something they don't know. So again, if you have strong personalities or you have something really interesting to say, put it in a video format, because people really love engaging with videos. Something else you can do is let someone else take over that aspect of marketing that you've been struggling with. So say you've been struggling with social media. Say you've been struggling with your guerrilla marketing. Have someone else on your team take that over, because if all it's doing right now is stressing you out and it's just not getting the results that you want, if it's not giving the results that you want, let someone else take it over. Even if it's just for a week, even if it's just for a month, even if it's just for 24 hours, that way you're able to get a clear headspace on it. And maybe, I don't want to say you're bad at this, but maybe they're just better at it and you didn't know that. So you got to give people a chance to really show you what their strengths are, and it can be a really great way to push yourself with your marketing. This is also a really great interlude for me to tell you that maybe you should consider hiring someone full-time to do that aspect of marketing that right now your team just doesn't have time for. A very obvious position here is not a lot of people hire a social media specialist anymore. They try to couple it with a sales department or a different type of marketing department, or your content writer is also doing your social media posts. This might be a great time of year to look at your budget and consider just having someone to come in and do your social media. They don't have to be a full-time employee yet, but if you have them come in half-time, part-time, just to do a social media post once a day, that is worth it. I know it seems like it's not, but it actually really is, because then their sole job is social media, because it's a lot to take on. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, I am going to give you another way that you can shake up your marketing. So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back.
Are you a business owner? Someone interested in the latest news that might affect your business? Then check out the GSMC Business News Podcast, a show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. The GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered.
And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquewish, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Before the break, we are talking about how you can push yourself with your marketing. I told you that you should be asking your audience what they're not getting from your marketing. You can do this with a Q&A or some sort of phone, email, or door-to-door survey. I told you how you can push yourself to try something new with internet trends, vlogging, doing videos, or Instagram stories for your content. I talked about how you can let someone else take over that aspect of marketing that has just been a drain on your team and a drain on your resources. And this may include hiring someone full-time to do that position, or even part-time to start, just to test it out. Now that we are back from our break, I want to talk about how you can shake up your marketing by changing your CMS, which is content management systems, or your organizational tools. So at the beginning of the year, this is a really great time to change things like this, because maybe you have new hires joining the team, maybe programs are now changing and they now have tools that they didn't before, so you want to use them. And it's just a really great time to say, hey, in the year 2020, this is what we're doing. We're no longer doing it this way, we're doing it this way. People are more likely to make changes now than they will be in like June or August or September, because that's when things really start to slow down and they're already sort of stuck in their ways. Right now, everybody's on that new year, new me kick, so why not join them by having a brand new content management system or a brand new organizational tool? So this is a very simple way to shake up your marketing, because it'll get people thinking in a new and creative way. Everything will be clean and organized. You can get rid of the old and make room for the new. So just by simply reorganizing everything, that can be a great way to get people thinking more critically and more creatively again, because they'll be like, oh, I totally forgot that we had these old posters. Weren't they really great? We should maybe reuse them again. So a few recommendations that I have for content management and organizational tools that maybe you haven't used or you've used in the past and maybe you'll want to consider trying again. Hootsuite. Hootsuite is such a great way to organize all of your social media and also to track your social media data. So before you go through Hootsuite, and if you're already using it, then I recommend you go through it and you get rid of any of the old stuff that you've posted so that you can start the year off clean and just with a blank palette in front of you. So Hootsuite does keep all of your data, but it's a new decade, so maybe it's time to get rid of stuff that you posted in 2005. Trello. Trello is amazing. I will never be able to get enough of Trello. I just think it is the bee's knees when it comes to content management systems and organizational tools. It's not a full content management system. You can't send out social media posts or notifications for your clients through there, but you can communicate with your team really effectively through it. They have all these fun new features on there, like a calendar mode and stickers and timers and notifications, and it's magical and wonderful. I don't know what else to say other than if you're not using Trello, it is free, so I'm confused as to why you're not using it. And it does also store all your data, so if you haven't been using it, it can be a great way to start off this decade so that in 10 years you can be like, what did we do in 2020? And you can take a look through all of your old files. The next one is Slack. Slack is a really great way to communicate with your team more effectively. If you don't have Slack, then I would question what type of program you're currently using to communicate with your team. It's a great way to not have cell phones out at work, not have Facebook open, but still have the ability to communicate with your team at a moment's notice. It's not great for storing data or anything like that because everything is happening super quick. So don't keep things on there that need approval by every team member. But if you're just looking for one final check from your manager, Slack is a really great way to Slack it over to them, and hopefully they'll put it on their to-do list. Slack is also just a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun gifts, and it's a great way to keep up that company morale and just sort of have some fun with your team. Excel spreadsheets. So I know I'm going to sound like everybody's grandfather when I recommend Excel spreadsheets as an organization or a CMS tool. But honestly, I had this boss who, looking back now, I can see the craziness of what she wanted me to do. I can understand it, but at the time I was like, this is crazy. Why would I do this? She wanted me to plan out a year's worth of social media content on an Excel spreadsheet. I was like, we have all these other great tools. We have Dropbox, we have Hootsuite, we have Sprout Social. Why would I do it on an Excel spreadsheet? And the reason for this was because then it was saved on everybody's computer. We had a hard copy of it. We could make changes easily. We could color code things. We could totally customize it to our needs rather than fitting the needs of some program that wasn't created for us. So I now, regretfully, I owe her an apology because I do think it is a really great system to use, and it is a really great way to keep track of all of the content you want to create. So highly recommend that even if you do use all of these other content management systems, you use Excel spreadsheets as well. Dropbox is a really great way to store your data and then reflect on your data and your content and your posting schedules and just team schedules, holidays, everything under the stars you can track and keep track of on Dropbox. You can send notifications to each other. You can have it on your phone. It's just a very clean and easy way to stay organized. So I definitely highly recommend downloading Dropbox if you haven't already. There is more storage available than on Google Docs. So I definitely recommend Dropbox for all of your storing and organizational needs. The next one is Sprout Social. So Sprout Social is a really great way to, I recommend Sprout Social for everything. I know, I must sound like a broken record at this point. But Sprout Social is a great way to track your data, but also send out data. You can schedule your Facebook posts, you can schedule your Instagram posts on there, and then you can track it immediately. I worked for a housing development for a long time, and they had like several projects at once. Sprout Social let me look at each of those projects individually or together as a group. So it's a really great way to stay organized, send out your content, and reflect on data. I can never recommend Sprout Social enough. Joomla. Joomla is a really great way to stay engaged with your team, and it's a really great way to have your content management system and all of your data in one place. Joomla is super easy to use. You can watch YouTube tutorials on it, and it's really great to train your entire team to use it, rather than some of these other ones might take a few weeks to train them properly. Joomla is super effective and gets the job done. So if you're looking to shake up your marketing, maybe just shake up your CMS or organizational tools, because it's a simple change that's going to make a big difference, and everyone can get on board with it right now because everybody is just in that organizational headspace because of the new year. If you want to find out more about which content management systems and organizational tools are really helpful for your company, I did an entire episode on it, so go check that one out. It is called Tech Marketing or something similar to that. Definitely go check it out on the GSMC podcast network because, I did a full hour on it and I gave some really great insights into which type of content management systems you should be using for your business. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to be talking about rebranding. I know, it's a very scary word, and I don't want anybody to be afraid because it's all going to be okay. I promise you that. So stay tuned because you're listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and I'll be right back.
Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the GSMC Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the GSMC Financial News Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. We are talking about how you can shake up your marketing. We have talked about how you can shake up your social media marketing by creating new posts, changing your posting schedule, and having your social media account audited. We also talked about how you can be pushing yourself with your marketing. We talked about how you could ask your audience what they're not getting from your marketing by doing a Facebook Live Q&A or doing a survey using the phone, email, or even door-to-door. We talked about trying new things such as trends, vlogging, videos, and Instagram stories. We talked about how you can hire people to come in and take over that maybe marketing tool or that marketing asset that you haven't quite mastered yet, and it's just been a drain on your resources and on your team. We are also talking about how a simple change you can make to shake up your marketing would be to change your CMS or organizational tools. I gave you some recommendations such as Hootsuite, Trello, Slack, Excel spreadsheets, Dropbox, Sprout Social, and Joomla. All of those are a really great and easy way to change up your marketing without making huge changes to your team. The reason I wanted to give you that overview of everything we've talked about so far, I know you were probably like, whoa, that was just all of that information again, really, really quick. I wanted just to give you an overview because I want to remind you of all the simple and easy ways that I've given you to shake up your marketing without having to do the next thing that we're going to talk about, because the next thing we're going to talk about is rebranding. Right now is the start of a new decade. So right now really is the best time to rebrand if you're going to rebrand. You can't do it when you're halfway through a project. You can't do it when you're halfway through a new marketing campaign. But you can do it right now when nothing's really set in stone, no plans have been fully approved yet, and things are sort of up in the air a little bit, and people are expecting new changes to come with the decade. So right now is a really great time to sort of ease into a rebranding. You could just premiere it at the beginning of February. You could talk about how you're going to be rebranding it now and get people's advice on it, get people's input about it. But before you do that, you do need to know how risky it is. You need to consider all of the outcomes first. You need to consider that it's going to cost you a lot of money to rebrand everything. Because rebranding doesn't just mean changing your logo on Instagram and changing all the logos on your photos going forward. You are going to have to get rid of your logo that is printed on anything. If it's on pens, if it's on posters, if it's on coasters, if it's on magnets, you're going to have to get rid of all of that merchandise. So if you already have boxes of it in storage, is this a good move for your company? Because you're going to have to pay to get all of that replaced, and then you're just going to have all this old stuff that you can no longer use. Is your audience going to respond to a rebranding? So right now, your audience might be very, very comfortable with your brand, your target demographic, and the type of content you produce. And obviously, comfort shouldn't be a reason to stay by any means, but it should be a reason to consider if your audience isn't going to be okay with the change. If they're not going to accept the change, then you can't really risk finding a whole new audience because you only sell this one thing and this one audience wants to buy it, so alienating them isn't going to help. Brand recognition. So if you have a very recognizable brand that people know and love, and they have backpacks with it on, they have t-shirts with that brand on it, are you willing to give that up? Are you willing to give up the fact that when someone walks into a store, they can instantly tell if that is your brand? Are you willing to give that up? If you don't have that, then don't worry about this point, because a lot of brands don't have that. But imagine how confusing it would be if you walked into a store looking for Coca-Cola and suddenly all their cans were black. Nope, that's Coke Zero. Imagine if all their cans were yellow. That would be crazy, and you wouldn't be able to notice them anymore if things were no longer that classic red or apparently black for Coke Zero. But what I'm saying is, if you have that brand recognition with your audience, you need to consider if it's the right move to give it up. So what I recommend doing is creating a pros and cons list, because maybe it is the right time to try rebranding. Like I said, right now is the perfect time because it's the beginning of a decade. People are expecting change. Your team will be more on board with it. But you need to really sit down and consider all of the outcomes before you make such a big move with your marketing. So create a pros and cons list. Get the old pen and paper out and just write down all of your thoughts about the change. What you can also do is ask an expert before making any big changes. And I really, really recommend this. We talked about how you should have an expert in to audit your social media. Have an expert come in and take a look at your brand. They'll measure things like how much it's going to cost, what your audience will think, and what your brand recognition currently is, and if it can take on a change. And the third thing I really want you guys to do is to take a look at all the work and all the progress you've made over the past decade. Reflect on that data, reflect on your content, and really decide if you're ready to let go of all of that. Because once you let go of all of that and you rebrand, that data and that content doesn't mean anything anymore. Yes, it means things in the grand scale of life of those are 10 years of your life and you worked really hard, or maybe you didn't and that's why you're rebranding, but they're no longer going to mean anything because you're basically restarting your company. So definitely consider all of that and just really make sure that this is the right move for your company and for your brand before you rebrand. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, I am going to give you my top 10 recommendations of books that you should read that will help shake up your marketing. These are books that helped me shake up my marketing and helped me shake up my attitude towards marketing. So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquith, and I'll be right back.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquith, and I've had so much fun on today's episode, and I hope you have as well. Today's episode was all about shaking up your marketing because, hey, new year, new you, new marketing. Let's get into it. Let's have fun. We're going to make this podcast filled with tips and tricks of how you can change your marketing, of ways you can change your marketing, of new things you should try. So stay tuned for future episodes, because this year is going to be a huge year for marketing. It is the first year of the new decade. So we are going to be doing so much fun stuff on this podcast that you're not going to want to miss. So before I leave you today, make sure you hit that subscribe button and you write a review. down below of what you want me to talk about this year. If you have a product you want me to review, if you have a trend you want me to talk about, if you have a person you want me to interview, write that in the review down below because I definitely do want to hear from you. Okay, guys, so before we leave for today, I want to give you my top 10 book recommendations that you can read or listen to because all of these are available on Audible if you're looking to shake up your social media. Number 1, Start with Why. Start with Why was given to me. I actually won it at a marketing social media conference. We had a competition to see who could do the best Instagram story for the day of who was just like recording what they were doing and showing their assets to the best of their ability. And I won the book Start with Why. And at the time, I was just an intern who had sort of volunteered to go to this conference. And it totally changed my perspective on marketing and how I was creating social media content and how I was creating digital content in general. So the idea of it is that you start with why. So why are you creating this? Why will this marketing technique work? Why is it important to you? So I highly recommend this book. He's done a few TED Talks on it as well that you can go watch. Maybe they're not TED Talks. Maybe they're just videos. I don't know. Go check it out. It is available on Audible so that you can listen to it on your drive to work. That's mostly when I listen to these books, on my drive to work. That way I can get all of those ideas fresh in my mind so that I can show up to the office filled with inspiration and ideas. Number 2, Good to Great. I mean, do I have to explain why this one's a good book? I feel like you guys are going to be on the same page as I am, as obviously, new year, new you. We want our content not to be good. We want our content to be great. And this book is going to show you how and why and when you can start implementing a good to great technique. Number 3, Made to Stick. Why some ideas survive and others die. So this was a really great book just to sort of learn more about how, we all have failures. We all crash and burn sometimes, but sometimes we don't know why. And this book gives real-life examples as to why and how some ideas fail where others stick. Number 4, Girl Stop Apologizing and Girl Wash Your Face. So I put both of these books as number 4. They are 2 separate books, but the reason I put them there is because Rachel Hollis, the author of both of them, is just the queen of marketing. And these books really have nothing to do with marketing other than the fact that they have everything to do with marketing. So she's going to tell you stories about her life. She's going to tell you stories about her husband and her kids and her job as a motivational speaker and all these things. But what I want you to pay attention to, especially when you listen to these books, is how Rachel Hollis is not even a person. She's a figment of marketing. Like, obviously, she's a real person. But everything she's created, all of the content she's created, including these books, is a reflection of her marketing and who she wants you to see rather than who she actually is. Now, obviously, I'm sure she's a very lovely person, and I'm not saying that. I would love to meet her one day. But what I am saying is she has done a very good job at creating a brand and sticking with that brand, which is why these books are so important to read if you're looking to do a similar thing. How to Be a Boss by Lily Singh. This is very similar to the Girl Stop Apologizing and Girl Wash Your Face franchise of books because Lily Singh is the first female talk show host for late night ever, which is super cool. And secondly, she's one of the most successful social media influencers of all time. So if you're looking to shake up your social media and you're looking to be more involved with that world, this is a really great book just to sort of get into that headspace. Number 6, Hooked. How to Build a Habit Forming Products. So it is for designers, marketers, startup founders, and anyone who seeks to understand how products influence our behavior. So again, if you're really looking to create something that people are going to use every day, Hooked, How to Build Habit Forming Products might just be the book for you. Jab, 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 right hook. Is a New York Times bestselling author and social media expert written by Gary Vaynerchuk. He shares his hard-won advice on how to connect with customers and beat the competition. So if you're looking for that expert opinion, again, very similar to the How to Be a Boss book by Lily Singh, this is a really great way to sort of get into the mindset of somebody who's been successful in the field and get their real-world experiences on how they dealt with the problems that maybe you're dealing with right now. Blue ocean strategy. So this is a marketing strategy that maybe you'll love, maybe you'll hate. You'll have to try it out on your own and let me know. Teaches you how to focus on the big picture in the same way that it's the blue ocean strategy, right? It's trying to get you to focus on the big picture marketing, and it's going to show you how and why you should do that. Leave your mark, land your dream job, kill it in your career, and rock your social media. So Eliza Litch is a global fashion communications executive, and she is huge in the Twitter world. People know who she is, people love her on social media, and it's a great way just to hear somebody's story on how they created content in a world that was filled with content and how they really had to learn how to stand out on their own. It's been said that this book is not a self-help book, but instead is rather like a life guide for people who are looking to create content but don't know where to start. Number 10, Contagious, Why Things Catch On. This book is going to give you real-life examples, real-life techniques of how you can really master the idea of word of mouth and how important it is to know what that is and how to structure messaging to fit that in this new social media world. So there you have it. There are my top 10 book recommendations for you to check out if you're looking to get some inspiration and shake up your marketing. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I definitely enjoyed creating today's episode for all of you guys, and I enjoyed creating this podcast. We post new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so make sure you stay tuned for all of that. Thank you for joining me today on the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquith, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.